Because I was like, I don't want to look too much, you know. I don't want people to think I'm like staring into their souls.
No, it's cool
But
because
I'm
it's
gonna
like
just
it's
do
we're a
it.
YouTube channel. We
Yeah.
are staring into their souls. Hi, I'm Gabe,
And I'm Kat.
and we're the
The
Ghouls
ghouls
Next
next
Door.
door.
Talking about spooky stuff. Happy New Year!
Yeah, new year, new us.
Yeah,
Old
hopefully
us, I guess. I don't know.
back to our old stuff.
Back to
That's
the
how we do
future.
it.
Isn't that it's the whole title
Yeah,
of that film? We did it. We're
yeah, we
here,
did.
guys. What?
Yeah, 2021. 2020 was a year for sure.
It's 2020 part 2, Gabe.
Okay.
It just extends forever. We never leave. We are
Yikes. Big
eternally
yikes.
2020.
I don't like that. No
It's okay.
bueno. Well, for New Year, like Kat said, we're reverting back to a little bit of our old stuff. We for the end of 2020, 2020 was rough on everyone, so
Mhm.
we decided to take it a little easy, which we were well owed. And
Yeah.
kind of just went back to this idea of just kind of reviewing films and just kind of talking about what's cool about them. But we want to kind of kick off the new year back to our old tricks of also incorporating facts, also doing,
Yeah.
the world around the film and what influences the film and why that makes it even better. Like what we,
Back to
do.
I feel like we kept educating, but it was
Oh,
like
for sure.
diet education. It was, it was
Yeah.
it was like what we used to do, just like slightly less. Because like
Yeah.
trauma.
It was like light, like the light, Lite. It's
Yeah.
like Ghouls Next Door to light.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. Where the light means life is crazy. And
Yeah.
trauma is happening. So we're gonna just chill and have a good time so that we can still make content. But now it's 2021. And although I saw a meme that said that we all need to just walk in quiet and not touch nothing,
Yeah. Yeah.
we're gonna do some stuff. We're gonna be more on it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're going to be intentional and educational in the ways that you know and love us to be. So we are starting the year off with a new series, as we are one to do, called For the Culture.
Yes.
Yay! It's specifically about different cultures and horror films, so their trauma or their experiences explored through cinema, similar to what we've done in our foreign horror series, which you can remember from 2019. I'm pretty sure.
Wow.
And we definitely want to do a foreign horror series again. We've, are brainstorming ways to redo that. But for this one, it is specifically just like we're going to talk about these different cultures and how they're exploring certain horrors of their experiences with horror films. And we're kicking it off with quite a film that really sets a really high bar. We have like the first two of this series, like we are like, getting into and are already really great. Like I think it's kicking off our 2021 to be really quite awesome.
Yeah, it ruined like my whole day, but like in that way, like in a good way, where I was just like, that was rough.
Yeah.
Everything hurts. Like I was like sad for the rest of the day. And I was like, what's wrong? And I'm like, if I was a zombie, it'd be fine if you killed me. I don't like freaking out. I was so like in panic. And I was like, such sadness. How will okay, we're just gonna watch a different movie. It's gonna be fine. And that was me.
Yeah. And then the different movie was also sad, but in a different way.
Yeah.
So it was just like less like gratuitous and
It was less
like gory.
Gory.
Yeah.
I didn't know I didn't like gore until I saw this movie, and I was like, wow, ouch.
We know you don't like gore. Remember I had to do that whole gore episode without you?
That's fair. I just like I've seen Saw and I thought it was fine. You know, like I could watch it. And I was during this, I was like, I feel sick. I never want to eat again.
Yeah,
I don't
it definitely
know.
got to me. Yeah, what we're talking about in our roundabout way, and what you know from
Sorry.
what this it's called this episode, Blood Quantum,
Yes.
which is a great film about Native peoples and their zombie apocalypse that they experience. And it's so good. It's so on the nose in a beautiful way. It is
Yeah.
very graphic and gory for sure. So like definitely like you need to be able to handle that. Like understand this is definitely a horror movie. Like there's nothing that's
Yes.
skimping around being not a horror movie. Like it is for sure. And it was really good. Like that I don't have
It was amazing.
any
yeah.
complaints.
Oh yeah, no, me neither. It was like beautifully filmed. It had like some really cool shots. It was entertaining. It was genuinely horrific, as most of life is, but like film wise, oh my god. So
Yeah.
it was effective.
And it's, you know, it's post-apocalyptic because it's taking place in the past, but it's a post-apocalypse. Like there's a zombie outbreak. That's what the whole film's about, which is why if you're watching on YouTube, we are dressed in our post-apocalyptic outfits. I went
Yeah.
pretty apocalyptic, like where there's still eyeliner, but like there's a little dirt, you know?
Yeah.
But like it's like, you know, when protagonists, like they wake up in the morning and they clearly have makeup on. And
Yeah.
you're like, that, no one wakes up like that. That's me, but for the apocalypse.
Yeah. I'm also that. I'm just kind of fashion.
Yeah. Yeah. We're fashion apocalypse.
Yeah.
We're playing a lot of Cyberpunk 2077. So we're like really
We're ready.
leaning into the cool
I don't know if
post-apocalyptic world.
cyberpunk is fashion.
No,
They dress
it's-
crazy.
yeah, nonsense. It's nonsense. It's like the knots, but like cyberpunk.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's just like what do we what items are around that we can repurpose
Everything's
into something
neon.
else? Yeah.
So
I enjoy the weird tech stuff.
yeah. It's a whole different
cool.
world.
Yeah. I'd like to say we're ready for the apocalypse. I just read a book called Leave the World Behind, which I won't say is a great book.
Okay.
It took so much of my energy to finish it because like 150 pages in, like nothing happened, and I was like livid because I was like, I am wasting time that I could be reading a book I like to read this. But I also was like, I can't not finish it because I have I keep like giving up on books and I don't want to do it. So I was like, I'm going to get through it. But it's like this family, they go on vacation. But in the background, what they don't know, because they're on vacation, they're in this like random house, is that there's like bombs that have gone off and like got to New York. And so then like the residual effects are coming to them.
Yeah.
And like they hear like the sound barrier break because airplanes flew by, but they don't know that because there's no internet, there's no communication. And so it's like this really awful, like you're detached. And so like peppered in to like their very intimate worries and normal people fears, like the writer would put like, oh, and then she's like, oh, they're doing laundry and, you know, to avoid the laundromat later. And it's like, but what she doesn't know is the laundromat owner is trapped in the subway and he'll be in there for 4 hours before he dies of lack of oxygen. And so it's like, what? Yeah. So like you'll get little glimpses of that. And so it ends really sad. Like no one's living in this, like, but it just ends. And I was like so sad. I was like so emotional. And I was like, I hate you, book. I hate that I went through this whole thing and now I'm emotionally scarred. But the one thing that I got from that was like, okay, so I need a go bag. I was like, I mean, I'm in Philadelphia, so if New York gets hit, I'm screwed anyway. Like, I'm not even the good kind of screwed, like, where they die immediately. Like, I die after a while, and it's gonna hurt the whole time. But, like, go bag. I was like, I need a go bag. What do we put in there? I need iodine tablets. Like, I was like,
Oh,
which
'cause
one of us is going to get a
nuclear. Okay,
gun?
I got you, I got
That's
you.
what I mean. Yeah. Like if it's a nuclear thing, like Philadelphia.
I mean, I've had a go bag since I lived with you.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm ready to do
I
it.
have the stuff. I have the heated, I have that blanket that's like metallic looking.
Yeah.
I have weapons. I have murder, stab, which is the tiny hand knife
Yeah.
from Purge election year.
Oh, yeah, yeah. We
It's my
have various
favorite.
knives and swords and blunt weapons. But Mike listed off all the typical apocalypse weapons that we don't have, like, you know,
Ah,
the bat with the nails in it or the barbed wire
well, that's
or a
things you can make.
crossbow.
That's an opportunistic weapon.
Yeah. We don't have a crossbow.
But we do not. We do not. But yeah, Blood Quantum. We're talking about a film.
Yes.
Are we summarizing the film now or later?
I think we should summarize it later.
Okay.
We'll start with the facts
Got
because
you.
the
Let's talk
title
about facts.
itself kicks us off. Like I just Googled Blood Quantum and then I was like, oh.
Yeah, like this is a film.
The whole time I was like, why is it called that? Well,
Yeah.
saddle up.
Yeah. So, yeah, guys, it's a good segue into what we're learning about today, which, as the title of the film states, Blood Quantum, it represents something. And I'm going to be real honest of my own ignorance regarding the significance of the title and my ignorance around the historical context behind it. I hope after hearing some of this stuff, even after watching the film, I think that's what the film really did, is it like encouraged us to ask questions and be like, what is this?
Mm-hmm.
Let's learn some stuff. And that's what the director said, like he wanted people to get from it. So
Yeah.
I read some articles, as we do here. And as we often say, I'm not a scientist. I'm not an expert. I learned a little bit of stuff. I hope you take this energy and go learn things also.
Mm-hmm.
And like research yourself, because I'm not an expert. I am a historian because I got a degree in history, but not about this. So I will continue.
Yes.
I read an article from NPR. It's called "So What Exactly Is Blood Quantum?" And I'm like, thanks, NPR. I was also wondering. In the article, they give some background on blood quantum, defining it as the like amount of Indian blood or native blood that an individual possesses. So if, you know, Native Americans generally have an idea of what blood quantum is because of the way the United States has influenced this, or I guess like European influence in the Americas has stated like that it has to do with commodifying people to see what kind of benefits or land or whatever is distributed. So blood quantum being a way that the United States Department of the Interior calculates percentage of native blood of a person and what that allows in terms of citizenship, rights, benefits, and like recognition from native tribes. So this is from the article. The federal government, and specifically the Department of the Interior, issues what is called a certified degree of Indian blood, and that is a card similar to an ID card. So in a way, blood quantum is calculated by using tribal documents, and usually it's tribal official or government official that calculates it. So it's, to my knowledge, one of the only races that requires an ID card in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And it was originally passed to basically limit their citizenship. So it was put on to native tribes as a way to like eventually have them not exist anymore so that they wouldn't have to honor treaty delegations. So essentially it's like the government's real effed up way of trying to like eliminate native people or have them assimilate into like white culture.
Yeah, like they can't, you know, interracial marry because then their blood is diminished. It's less what they need. Yeah, that's real effed up. Which is this film. So
yeah. And there was another article I pulled from that was I believe written by a tribe. It says, what is blood quantum and what does it mean for the future of the Oneida? And it says basically that if you are full-blooded Oneida, if they marry someone who's considered like half-blooded, like so 50%, their children will only be 3/4. And As Lakota Elder General Walking Bull said, when the Native Nations adopt blood quantum, we can never restore the rock. We can only pile stones upon one another. And it basically, like, there's no, once you're like, I don't have the right word. Once you like have a person who's considered full with half, like it only goes down. You can't like rebuild the rock, essentially. So it was used
keep like diminishing, like it'll keep diluting. That's the word.
Diluting, yes, thank you. So yeah, it was used purely as a way to make it so that the United States did not have to acknowledge and like finish out treaty obligations. So if a certain percentage of people, I believe for Navajo it was 25% you had to be, otherwise like anything less than that you were not able to be a citizen of your tribe. So sometimes that would like separate families. So like people who had kids, they might be a part of the tribe and a citizen of the tribe, but then their kids could not because of if their like blood was essentially, as you said, getting diluted. And this is like something that's like really putting a toll on Native communities because they're essentially losing numbers of people. And the goal is essentially from the United States, so they don't have to give them land, they don't have to give them like benefits through the treaties that were promised. And it's similar to, if you're not familiar with blood quantum, which I wasn't, I had heard of the 1 drop rule because they actually did teach about that in school. But the 1 drop rule measured the amount of black blood in black people had in society, and that ensured that every person who had at least 1 drop would be considered black and would be covered under these discriminatory laws, and in even earlier days enslaved. So I also read that it kind of tied back to England and how they divvied up property. So like if you had a relative who died and you had like family who essentially a full-blooded son or whatever would be the one to inherit the house. So if they like had family that was further out, or if you think like how they designated kings and stuff like that, like how it was always bloodlines, it kind of, from what I've read, it seems like it stemmed from that. But the biggest thing is it's something that's like decimating Native communities and like really messes with people's identity. I believe the director even had some interaction with this, and that like I believe he said his kids weren't able to be in like considered a part of his tribe because of that. I might be wrong, but I think that's what I read. He did. Yeah. So, you know, it's messed up. No one should have a card that basically, I don't think like any other culture has a card that's like, you are this, like racially speaking. So it's like commodifying racial identity and for like the means of property and like to fulfill treaty obligations. So it's like making people only worth how much blood they have, and it's like really messed up. So that's what I learned.
Yeah. Well, it's like I was reading this this book of novellas called The Office of Historical Corrections, and in it, one of the novellas, it's like, you know, this girl, and they're like asked like what she is, like someone like kind of slyly asked, and she's like mixed, so she's like black, but she's also Polish, and then she had like something else in there, and she like makes this statement of like how like she's American, right? Like that's what she is, and it's like that the American can't come first, yet the combination of what she is like in her like different cultures could only have been possible by being an American. Like in America, you know, the quote unquote melting pot, which is like, that's not true. It's not a melting pot. It's like a stew. It's like, that's where people of different cultures end up together and have those children. And it's really like this cruel government way of like patrolling and keeping people in their little reservations, right? Like to keep them in these little societies where they have to stick to themselves. Like it inspires them to only associate with each other. It's like the toxic royal lines, like those Germans where they ended up having the really disfigured, like the guy with a very large chin, because it was just like people just marrying and having sex with their very direct relatives because they were like, we got to keep the line pure, which is gross. And it just like,
Yeah.
it inspires that, like, you know, you are going to stick to your people. You don't touch our people, which is like a quote at the beginning of the film too.
Yeah.
But it is like inspiring that. But on top of that, which is also gross, is like the fact that it is, like you said, it's not, you can never build up that stone. It's always going to be just piling these little, you know, pebbles eventually, because at some point it's going to be gone. And then how can you tell an entire tribe that none of them are real? Like, how could you say that you're
Yeah.
not that, or you're not enough of your own culture
For
to be
sure.
awarded
Yeah.
anything? Like, there is a deadline, like there is an ultimate end to which we will no longer, like, that the government will no longer have to support and be held responsible for the,
For their actions.
yeah, the awful,
Yeah.
like, and there's like a few things in the film that we'll talk about where it kind of very obviously is like, you know, showing those things. I think it's interesting because it is like Canadian too, because like I think as Americans we forget that like
That
Canada
North
also has
America
them.
has,
Yeah, like hello. And so I think that is really awesome to like, that we can like look at that and be like, oh right, you know, we're
Yeah.
not just, you know, hiding our history that's grotesque, but we're also neglecting other histories. Like we're
Yeah.
choosing specific
Well, if you
histories
think
to not
about
look
it,
at.
like it all stems from Europe. So
Mm-hmm.
like the atrocities all stem from
Yeah.
Europe. So they happened here, but the root of it started there. So
Yeah.
it all kind
It's
of
the,
ties.
you know, colonialism.
Yeah, colonization of places. It was also really telling. I think like the fact that it's a zombie film and the fact that we're currently dealing with a pandemic that is, you know, not zombies, but is also like decimating the Native community,
Mm-hmm. And
because
people of
it's
color.
killing older people. So you're losing culture because elders are generally the people who like still have the language and have that history and might not have been able to have the time to pass that down to younger generations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you're also losing a lot because of the pandemic, and I think it kind of translates into the film.
Yeah, it's a very timely piece, like, and unintentionally so. Like he didn't
Yeah.
plan for that to happen, it just did, and now, you know, it is something that we can kind of relate to or understand a little more intimately because we're living that to some
Yeah.
degree. Like, yeah, it's not zombies, but we are seeing like we've said before, like the horrors of a zombie apocalypse really isn't the zombies. Like that's just a catalyst to
people.
expose the rest of it. Yeah, it's to
Yeah.
show that the systems are flawed, shows that people are questionably inherently evil. Like we have, you know, these opportunities when like our society is stripped away to the bare bones to really look at it. And
Yeah.
honestly, like that's what this pandemic has also done, is showed us that, you know, the government has specific priorities and they are not for the people. And
Facts.
most of us knew that already, right? But it is
$600.
so obvious. Yeah, and didn't even,
Yeah.
not even doing it. No one's getting it. And instead, you know, was bail out, you know, big companies, and all of that nonsense. So it's very clear, and also like the way that it is affecting specific communities more because of lack of, you know, funds or resources, or just like just thinking about the cure, or not the cure, sorry, the the vaccine,
The
and
vaccine,
how,
yeah.
you know, Black communities are reluctant, very reasonably so, to take it because America has a very grotesque history of, you know, hurting Black bodies for the sake of healing others that they
Yeah.
deem more worthy. I mean, you know, Henrietta Lacks, like Saylet, like Tuskegee, like anything, like
Yeah.
Lovecraft Country. Let's, you know,
Yeah.
it's reasonable that there's hesitancy there, and also like the health system has not, you know, cared for, you know, Black people and people of color for a long time,
Yeah.
and often discredit their pains, which is like, you know, another part of this too, is like, if you know, in the film that we'll see like what the big twist is, which is really quite interesting, without that twist I don't think that they would have, no one would be going there, no one would be going to that reservation for help.
Yeah.
They would have left it to burn.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's our little facts corner.
You're welcome.
We did it. We did little
did
dive
it.
in. We're kind of
Dip our
tiptoeing in.
toe.
Yeah, like slowly getting back in. Again, we're not experts in anything. We're like quick experts, but we love to learn, and that's what films like this inspire. So if you
Yeah.
are very interested in this and you think that's like, whoa, I didn't know that, that's really what the way that we felt when we were writing up this stuff and we found like articles, continue to look and know that in our show notes we include the links
Sources,
to the articles. So read up, and we definitely encourage that. All right, so we watch stuff. That was the whole thing, is that we watch stuff. We watched Blood Quantum from 2019. Here's what it's about. Ready? A zombie virus decimates all of Earth's population except the Mi'kmaq community of Red Crow. Directed by Jeff Barnaby, who also directed other stuff.
Nice.
That I'm definitely going to put on the list for
future
episode.
Yes.
Because I really enjoy this. I enjoy him. So this film is great.
Fact.
That's it. I'm done. No, I'm kidding.
That was the whole thing.
That's it.
We're done.
Say less, No, it is really good. So it is a zombie film, and it's very gory, like we said. So like, and spoiler alert for this film, we highly, highly recommend you watch it. Because it is so good.
Yeah.
Did we watch this on Shudder?
I believe so.
I think it's on Shudder.
I watched it on AMC, but I think you watched it on Shudder.
Yeah, I believe I watched it on Shudder. Yeah, because the other one was also on Shudder. Yeah, so if you have Shudder, we always recommend it because it is really great. And has some really phenomenal work. And what you'll see like next week too is like there's intentional work there. Like it is looking for films that are saying something and are being said by the people who have right to say them.
Which is just really cool. Like finally, come on.
Yeah, it's nice. Yeah. We also have in this series a Blumhouse because he set out to produce 4 films during the spooky season that were intentionally about other people, and I thought that was nice. So I wanted to give him a little
we talk crap on him a lot, so when he does a good thing, you gotta acknowledge it.
Exactly. Exactly. So this film is it follows these Native peoples who, like, we have like the sheriff and his 2 sons and his ex-wife, and like a bunch of other characters who are also there on the reservation. And the beginning is a really good like slow burn of a zombie outbreak, where it's like happening on the outskirts. It kind of reminded me of Dawn of the Dead. Like I really love it was 2003,
I think,
where like that first part where it's just like you're going about your day normal and like you're hearing sprinkles of like the things.
It was a
fantastic
weird, and then
it's just
lead-in,
like
for sure.
Chaos, In this, it's like we're hearing,
there's
people
the fish
calling like
the fish.
Yes, we see the fish first. Then there's like because he's the sheriff, he's getting calls that are peculiar. Of people like biting other people, and we see that like at the hospital they're out of
rabies shots.
It wasn't rabies. It was
tetanus.
Yeah, it was tetanus. Yes, because so many people were biting people, and I was like, that's weird. Like, what is that? And they call them Zeds. They call them Zeds, the reanimated people. And it's like, it's a slow burn into it. And what I found really interesting and exciting was within like the first 20 minutes, our like several protagonists, like people that we are following, are bit. And there is that classic, like, we hear from one, like, over the radio where she says, your wife says, like, don't get bit. And that's all we hear. And then, of course, they get bit, like, immediately after. I was like, what is the rest of this film?
If, like,
those
the
people
main
are
people
bit.
have already been bit.
Yeah, what do we do now? And then it progresses forward in time, and so it's like, okay, who are we following now? Like, what's
6
going
months
on?
later,
What's left of society? Yeah. And they're all still kicking and you're like, "What?" And there's like there's spray paint, and I immediately realized, cuz like at the opening scene there's a quote that I'm paraphrasing because I can't remember exactly what it said, but it was more or less like, if your children, speaking to like Native peoples, are like get involved with white children, like essentially like become coupled and have children, that it will bring like pain. Or like it is bad. It's like a bad omen to do that. And which, like, when we think about Blood Quantum, like that makes sense, that you would caution against them doing that because now it's diluting the blood and now you're no longer a part of this tribe. Right. And so we get that. And I was like, okay. And then I'm like, wait a second. All the people that we saw were white that had turned into zombies. Like the one guy, they like,
call them townies.
His wife, who has... Yeah. His wife, like, he is like a user, a drug user. And so he's like, an outcast of society, which Jeff Barnaby like speaks on about like that experience and of like, inheriting trauma, right? Especially of your whole culture. Like you just inherit this trauma. And so people find different ways to cope with that and just deal. So he's a drug user, and then his partner also is, but she's white, and so he keeps making all these things where he's just like, no one wants to come out here because she's white, and there's clearly this problem in the society when you are with someone who is white. And the same thing happens with like the son who has his white girlfriend Charlie, where Joseph just says to her, like, "Are you ashamed of me?" And she's like, "No, I'm ashamed of him," like her dad, because it's like, it was kind of like a Romeo and Juliet sort of thing where it's like, our parents don't want us to be together. But it's very, and at that point, it's like, he's like, "Are you ashamed of me?" Because at that point where society is normal, because this is before the full outbreak, like she is at a higher stance in society. And so it means a lot to him to be accepted. And then later it's totally turned where now she is this one white person who is a risk in the millions of, not millions, but the all the other people in this refuge who are Native and are immune.
And like, if anything were to happen to her, essentially, like by existing, she is putting them all in danger. In the off chance that she becomes infected or her baby becomes infected, like we've seen with what is it, Dawn of the Dead, that has the zombie baby? Yeah. Or we think back to Good Manners. She's worried that the baby's gonna like eat its way out if it becomes infected inside of her.
Yeah. So it's like she's a liability, she is a risk, and everyone is watching her. Now everyone is aware of her and like is uncertain, and she's an outsider. And she has this like, conversation with him where she's like uncomfortable about it, and he doesn't really say it, but to me I was just like, first time? Oh, you're new here, huh? To being the outsider in the community where people don't trust you. Weird. And I thought that was a really good conversation. There's like, where it first met with like, the people coming in and they're trying to bring in this white woman who's wrapped in a blanket and is very clearly sick. And they're like, "We're not going to let you in your sick blanket into our place, okay?
Yeah.
Like, we know what history is, and that's not allowed here." Reasonably, of course. And, there is a quote that I found very interesting from an article, because that's what we do, from Vulture, where it says, the title is "Jeff Barnaby is worried white people won't get blood quantum." And it says, "Are the Native people duty-bound to help the white survivors, or do generations of marginalization and dehumanization by the ruling classes give them license to lock their gates, protect their own, and let the world outside burn down?" And this like made me think of when we were talking about BIT and how we were, for us, it was like, at some point, like the fact that they turned it around at the end and kind of softened like the very powerful messages throughout of just like anger. And we're like, but don't be too angry, right? Like, it's not good to be too angry. And it was like, but what right do you have to tell us that this is the wrong way to cope? And to lash out and to be tired, right? Like, and the same thing happens with a lot of like with Get Out or with Lovecraft Country. It's like, I think we don't need to like placate or minimize the message. Like, at the end of the day, like, you have every right to be angry. And I think that's what I really enjoyed a lot about this film. And there's this interview with Jeff Barnaby where he really talks at length about Lysol, which is one of his sons who has a very traumatic life and acts out. And, he has the younger brother who has a more contained life and has, people who believe in him and what he can do, versus Lysol, where they've just all given up. And they, give him this excuse of this unknown thing that happened to his mom, but we, get the idea that it's something awful and that he is like acting out and he feels like this is just it, like, this is all I'll ever be. And it is that like trauma, like that inherited trauma and that coping with like being hopeless. And so him as a character, like, he very much is a villain, but at the same time, it's like he was speaking truth. Like, he like lashes out and is like, do not bring that woman in here. Like, why are we opening our door to the people who wouldn't ever do that for us? One. And two, like, they are honestly like risk. That is a risk that you're putting onto my people for what we don't owe them. Right. Like, and it's like this, he is a representation of that anger.
Yeah. And you're thinking about who's bringing it too. You're also thinking about who's the one bringing these people in. It is the white girlfriend who's like finding all these white people to like endanger them further.
Yeah. In that, like, in the Vulture interview with Jeff Barnaby, when he's speaking on Lysol, he says, it's interesting because you don't really see native villains with epic backstories in the sense that he is representative of a history rather than just his story. He's like the native everyman. He's almost an anti-hero. My wife and I had this back and forth, and she's like, he's the hero of the movie, right? And I'm like, really? How do you come to that? And she was like, well, everything he says, even though it's coming from a place of anger, comes true. And very much does. And there's this, so like we said, it's very graphic. There's a scene that will haunt me for forever. And it's when he, again, spoiler alert, it's pretty graphic. And if you read any of these articles, it's mentioned, where his penis is bitten off by a zombie. Or Zed. That scene, what gets to me isn't like it's kind of interesting because like, what's going on. She does have the penis, but it's not like it's not over the top where we see that. We come in after it's happened and there's like commotion. But what stuck to me was his cry, and he's like reaching out to his brother, and it's just like this panic, and like it's all kind of coming, like the realization of like, help me, like that's it. This is it. This is the end. And reaching out for his brother. And there's like like this real softness to Lysol that we don't see until that very moment. And it is a breaking point for him. And a part of that was like, Jeff Barnaby spoke on like how like he is, targeting so many things, and to target like colonialism and all that also means in like the problems within the culture too. He's like, is also to confront like the patriarchy and misogyny as well. And that's a big part of this, is like his penis is gone. And that's like a direct link to manhood, and sends him into insanity, right? Like, it sends him to do these acts that he had warned them against. Like, he was like, if you let these people in here, bad stuff is going to happen. Bad stuff happened to him. So then he unleashed it on the rest of them. And he wasn't wrong. Like, that was a white person they let in who was sick, that they did not look over for some reason. I was like, this is The Thing, okay? Like, the film The Thing, we're all getting naked. We're getting naked, we're seeing everyone's details and figuring out if you're a zombie. Like, we're not letting people pretend for a minute. Like, what, are you kidding? And that's what he warned them of, and then he is the victim of what he was trying to warn everyone of, and then in turn warned everyone else, right? And like, by showing them, like, okay, here's it is. And he says it too. He's like, go eat them. Like, go eat their dicks. He says to her.
Yeah.
And her name is Lilith, which is, that's fun. To be named that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That was quite a moment. It hurt.
Yeah.
For sure.
Oh, yeah. Something I found interesting in this dive was in the LA Times, which we're spending a lot of time with the LA Times for this episode. There's an article about how Blood Quantum is timely, given that it's that it was released during our global pandemic, right? And so something I found interesting was that when Jeff Barnaby first pitched it in 2007, no one wanted it. And I was like, oh, it's just like Sorry to Bother You with Boots Riley, where he was like trying to push out this film and people were like, no, it's not time. And then like finally the world has caught up, but the message is the same. Like the film is the same. The first iterations, he said the film was a lot angrier. And then what changed was he became a father. And so it became more about this like generational, passing of the torch of, questionably terrible fathers or their relationship with their sons kind of thing, which is great. Yeah. But it was also like the message was the same. Like it was the same thing. And it has always been relevant since 2007. It just took, now for people to be like, oh, that's great. Bring it up. Let's do it. Let's dive in. Yeah. And I thought that was great.
Ready to face it, I guess.
Yeah.
It's definitely.
And the article says, it was a different time. Nobody was ready for a story like this. Nobody was ready to hear that the great capitalist dream was falling apart and colonialism was going to help usher us into destruction. So it was the culture that took catching up to the script. Nothing changed, just the cultural perception of it. And I feel like that's so true. And there's a few things that he mentioned in some articles about like how people didn't they asked him like, why is Lysol so angry? And because to them, they didn't understand that it's not just his story. Like he doesn't need just personal motives. He had the motives of the entire history of his peoples inspiring his anger. Like he was putting that all on his shoulders. And that was what was inspiring that vitriol. It wasn't like, my mom died. My dad wasn't there for me. Because that's like a cliche. Like, that sucks. Yeah. And it does make us pretty hateful. But it was more than that. It was the reason why that even happened. Like, and that was something beforehand.
Well, it's generational trauma.
Absolutely. Yeah. And he says in that same article, after all, artists make art to help process traumatic events. And this is when he had said what you said at the beginning, that he feels that his films are a gateway drug to better conversations, which is like, the fact that like you named this Blood Quantum and it is very clearly a conversation piece, and it gets you to ask the questions of like, what don't I know? What aren't they telling me? Again, because this isn't my experience. I don't have this experience. There's, Blood Quantum. Do you do that to me? I've got a 0% or like a 1% maybe, because this is America and, history. But it's like, it makes me think of like all those people who are like, what's her name in Congress or whatever, who Trump calls Pocahontas. But that she has like a little bit of a like native blood in her, and she like tries to go on that, but it's like, you're a white lady. Like, come on. Like, you do not have those experiences. Like, and she tries to like laud that out like as it's something.
Okay.
And it's oh my God, I can't believe it. There's someone yelling at me in the internet. It's probably Roland. Roland is like, yelling it's this person. Me. I'm sorry, Roland.
Hi, Roland.
Hi, if you're listening to this. Yeah.
You'll tell us later, and then we'll be like, oh, yeah, comment it.
Yeah. There's so many good quotes from Vulture with Jeff Barnaby, because, like, I just really want to be his best friend. He does mention the fact that his daughter is not legally in the tribe because of how diluted her blood quantum is, which is sad. But he says this, and it's like, oh, this is what we say all the time about apocalypse films. He says, I really think that's what apocalypse movies are about in this day and age. Everybody wants to see the system fall because people are beginning to realize, hey, they're not just exploiting minorities and black people anymore. They're coming after everybody. Now it's an issue. Late stage capitalism. That's what they're calling it. And it's like, this is just capitalism, man. This is a stage that it's always been at. Yeah. You're just new to the game, which is exactly this film, right? It's like, this has always been a problem.
If you think of Charlie's like entire experience, it's exactly it. Is it like she's late to feeling the weight of this stuff?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then she's like, hey, this sucks.
Oh, no.
And I definitely felt for Charlie. I did. And there's like a scene where she is watching the mom tell a story in her native tongue to this young girl. And so she's like, what were you saying to her? And she's like, it's a bedtime story that I would tell Joseph all the time about his grandfather. And like later, we get that kind of conversation with another one where he says like, tell my grandchildren my story, tell them good things about me. It was this realization from her that as this outsider, like she can't tell, like she doesn't understand that story. She doesn't speak that language. And so she won't be able to tell her kid that story. She doesn't even understand like how important that story is. And I think like that, or like she understands it's important, but yeah, she doesn't have the context. And that was a very intimate, like nice moment that I feel like was really good for Charlie to experience, to know like, okay, it's really important that my kid like is this. And because like even at the end, like when the child is born, he says like she's all right. Like she's not gonna catch it. Essentially, because she is, right? And it's like this acknowledgement of like, no, she's a part of me. She's a part of my people. And so she is immune. Like she isn't enough of you to be at risk. And that's like, it's sad, right? But it's also kind of empowering that and it was something I enjoyed because it's so blunt. Like the graffiti on the wall said like, if it's red, it's dead. If it's white, it'll bite or something. And that like, was the confirmation of like, oh, only white people turn. Cause it's not like so outright. Yeah. Like they never say that. Like it's always like implied. And at that point I was like talking to Kat and I was like, only white people have done it. It's only white people. So it's okay. And when you see that, it's like, so like unabashedly blunt. Like it's like we're telling you that we are the saving grace, and it's the blood that you have like not demonized, but the blood that you are like judging and quantifying is the one that is surviving.
Yeah. And I read a quote, I don't remember where it was from, but it was essentially that like there has been like years of like putting Native people on reservations that's like land that nobody wanted, essentially. Like, and now that land is the only safe place left. So it's like the land that you pushed them off into, now you want claim of that too. Yeah. Like that is the only safe place. And like, I guess like how the tables have turned, I guess is kind of like a thought, but like it was really powerful. And like, you really think like of the history of like forcing Native people to be on land that like is not the land they wanted. It was not their land. Like they basically just like forced people into the worst places, and forced like people to migrate like way away from where like their people were from. Yeah. And now that is like the last safe place that exists in the entire planet. Yeah. So like, and even the grandpa, as he's saying, he's like, I have left land too many times. I'm not leaving here. Yeah. Yeah. That this is, I'm not going to leave this and kind of doing that. Cause I think that is, it's at some point it's like, okay, well then this is mine, like, I'm like, we're not going to give up anymore to you. And that's kind of where it was. And I think overall it's such a great film. It's like, super gory. But
but like the message is so much there. But it's also like it isn't just a genuinely good zombie film too. Like the stuff is very unique, and how it, you know, you feel for the characters and the sadness and just like finality of a zombie film is like, you know, that no one really survives. Like you don't really, there's no happy ending in a zombie film. That's just how it is. Like you're gonna die for either by a zombie
eventually,
or a person, like, you know? And so it's like, there's never a good story. And I think that's what is so great about this film. It's very true to that. It's a very traditional horror. And I think that's great. And because that's what he wanted. He was like, yeah, I mean, it sucks that like, you know, we can't just have one, you know, we do have to put political stuff in there. But that it's also nice to be able to use this as like a cathartic experience of like acting out and envisioning a world where, you know, they're on top and, you know, all the wrongs that are done to them are retribution, you know. One thing he does mention in the Vulture article is just about like how hard it is as a Native person to create content and to get funding for it. And that he's also upset about like, you know, companies like Netflix who are, you know, putting out there like, oh, we're making, you know, more films or series about these people, but like the people it's about are not in the room. And so like he mentions like, it's like, we're going to get a white scriptwriter, but we're going to get a Native script editor. And they're okay with it. So that's what inclusivity from my perspective has looked like. Like in his experience, it's like, it's all white people, but we get a brown person in here to look at it. or like, oh, we get like an Asian person in here to just look at it. Or we get an LGBTQ person to look at it and just make sure it's not offensive. And that's like what we've experienced in the, you know, in some of our series was like, it's a person, a white guy making a film. And then he just like asked his friends from that community if this was cool. And that means good job. You did your due diligence.
Yeah. And it's not enough.
No.
One thing you said, Gabe, that was like, you don't want it to be political, but the whole thing, like, because of Blood Quantum and things like that, existence is political at that point because they've commodified someone's race. Like, their race is a political statement just by existing. So, like, the media has to match that. Otherwise, it's not. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's... If existing is political, then everything made is political at that point. And that's okay because that's what is real. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not like some like sugar-coated rose-colored glasses version of it that like we've been forced to like shovel down in like our history that we learn in school.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, we sit down and have Thanksgiving. It's like, that's not
what that was. Or like the one day of class where you learn about the Trail of Tears and you're like, why is it called that? And they're like, shh. It's okay.
You know how you just cry sometimes? It's sad.
It's just so sad. Pocahontas loved that man. It's not, you know, she might have been a teenager. She might have been very, like, 13 years old. And yeah, she did, like, die immediately as soon as she set foot in England. But it's about love. That's why we made Avatar. It's just Pocahontas again. We love those stories, don't we? But, yeah. All right, we're in our old tradition. We would rate. We do our feelings section, and we would rate a film based on the topic, which is like they're linked together pretty closely.
Yeah.
So what we've decided is if you don't like it, it's Dead Zed, which is what they call the zombies.
Yes.
If you do like it, it is Lysol is an anti-hero.
Yeah.
Because he was.
He has every right to be angry.
I mean, it's their fault.
Yeah.
That, and like he has that whole story where he's like, I was just having sex with this girl, Lilith, and doing his thing. And then he went in to help his buddies and they arrested him because he had blood on him. And it was unrelated. It's just that he looked guilty.
Yeah.
And it was like that story prefaced him getting his dick eaten. So I just feel like, how do you not understand his anger?
Yeah.
Do not get it. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Kat, for I guess, because we also do the topic.
Yeah.
So, for the topic of the literal blood quantum.
I guess it's like, it's weird to rate something positively that's so awful. But it's just, it exists. So I think people should research it and learn about it. So
yeah.
I guess antihero, you know, like, because it's very necessary. It's something like I feel rude as hell that I didn't know. So it's like, do research.
Like learning about it is antihero. Its existence is a Zed dead because it's rude.
I just think it's dope that he named it this, because now when everyone ever Googles it, they'll learn something. Because it existed before the movie did, you know. And I think that like is really cool, because that's like a real direct way to get people to learn about something.
Yeah, because you ask yourself like, what is that?
Yeah.
Why is this that? And then it's like, oh.
I was literally sitting there like, wow, why is this called blood quantum?
Yeah.
And then when I Googled it, I was like, oh.
Yeah. If you don't like put in film or 2019 or whatever, it's just that. It's just information. Like I immediately read an article by Code Switch and I was like, oh, I'm glad we're doing this for the culture. Like right on the money. I wanted to do this for a while anyway. Because Blood Quantum to me, this film is definitely a Lysol is an anti-hero. It was everything I could have dreamed of and nothing at all that I expected.
Yeah.
In such a good way. So, and it was, you know, recommended by Sarah Mueller of Cinespeak, which, you know, I've written for. And they screened Blood Quantum and had a talk back with Jeff Barnaby I was just like, oh, that sounds super cool. And so, you know, she like was so hype about it that it was like immediately I was like, we got to figure out how to weave this in. I definitely wanted to make sure it was a time when we were, you know, being very specific and conscious and doing facts again, and not just kind of like our film review. And I hope that you all
to give it like proper credit.
Yeah, so I hope you look into it. Definitely watch this film again on Shudder or AMC or wherever you can find it. Given some, you know, money and props to Jeff Barnaby for his work. You will probably hear his name again because we will cover his other film. And we'll just like send him our praises because it's so cool.
It's so great. Like, I'm just like, wow, these are some of the best movies I've ever seen. And it's just like, it's rude that in 2007 it wasn't made. You know what I mean? Like that people weren't there yet.
That they weren't ready.
Messed up.
Yeah.
Like, it's just rude. That's all. And I'm really happy it exists. And I hope we just watch like more and more things. Because it's like really cool. Like as sad and like ouch as it is.
Yeah.
To learn about everything. It's necessary. And then it's like, sad, wow, okay. And it's, I mean, honestly, it's just like one step closer to like becoming a better person, I guess. And then also just like, it's cool every single time that we do a series where it's like, wow, okay, I might not have known about this if we didn't watch this film. Or like, even just being like, I always still have something to learn. Like, it's actively checking like ignorance. Just by existing, like just the fact that like we watched it, it's like, wow, that's really dope. So I hope we watch more really like impactful films like that.
Yeah, and I hope you enjoyed it, listener and viewer. And I hope it, you know, inspires you to look in and dig in. And I hope you enjoy this series as much as we do, and kind of going back to our roots of exploring a topic more in depth. And, you know, that you enjoy that journey with us, that we're more than just, you know, film reviews. Like we're talking about the horrors of society. That's our whole thing.
We can always rely on history to be horrific. So
it's terrifying and gross. And, you know, what did you say? Sad and ouch.
Sad and ouch.
Sad and ouch, for sure. That's history. And that's kind of our podcast a lot of the time. It's sad and ouch.
It just intersects, you know. You can't help it.
But with that being said, you know, enjoy the rest of this series. Remember to subscribe, like, comment, all that nonsense. We really appreciate it. Definitely leave us a comment. We love that. And don't get married.
They'll eat your kids, like literally. They'll
like zombies will eat them. Or
Yeah.
a kid will eat you.
Or the mom will eat their baby, like that scene that still haunts me. I still
Yeah,
see it
that's
if I close
pretty
my
horrific.
eyes, and it was awful.
Yeah, I was expecting another zombie baby. Nope.
Nope.
No, we didn't get
It
that.
was so awful. Oh my
I was like,
God.
oh no.
I was like, that
Oh.
didn't just happen.
And it just goes so fast. And you're like already in it. And you're like, if this is the beginning,
Yeah.
what are we in for? Yeah. Yeah, well,
Don't
bye.
do it. Bye.